All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome, everybody. I think I know most of the people in the room, but my name is Kevin Meisner. I'm the Chief of Police for the College District Police, and I've been in that capacity for about almost 2 years now, hard to believe. And then for 5 years before that was on this campus as the Director of the Police Academy, and prior to that, somewhere in that past life, about 25 years with the Tulare County Sheriff's Department. So today we are going to be talking about emergency response issues for the College of the Sequoias. I wanted to thank Dr. Cordero with the paralegal department who had helped to jumpstart putting together, this forum or this presentation because of a perceived need within our campus community to educate a bit more and talk and make people aware about, what would we do in case of an emergency incident on campus. Today we're going to look at emergency procedures overall for the first few minutes of the presentation and then move to what's probably one of the most significant discussions that's occurring today, and that's the issue of active shooters on our school campuses and elsewhere around. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with common emergencies on college campuses. Now, most of us could put up some white paper and come up with a list of emergencies pretty quickly as to what we would likely deal with on a college campus at some point in time, whether it's a K-12 or a college or whatever it may be. These are the lists that I looked at and thought that on a regular basis out there at some point, we might see something along this line. So just running through these quickly: a fire, either on our campus, a building or an incident that occurs on our campus or somewhere off of our campus that could be an adjoining property or something that may cause traffic issues, could have some type of smoke or whatever chemicals may be involved in that can impact operations on our campus. Earthquakes or other natural disasters that could result in damage to our buildings, evacuation needs, potentially rescue situations, and so forth. Injuries or death. It's not unusual at all to see medical emergencies on our campus, typically involving students, but at times involving staff, where we have the need for medical response, at times some first aid on campus, either provided through the health center, through a first responder or somebody who may be there, who has some background to be able to provide some assistance, but tend to really get everything kind of stopped for a few minutes while we're dealing whatever that issue may be. Bomb threats may likely result in evacuations and ongoing investigations. Fortunately, we haven't had a great deal of issue with that in our district and our campuses, but when those come in, we have to be aware of protocols that gets information on the callers and as much information as we can to determine the level of the potential threat. Intruder and police incidents are probably something that occurs as frequently as anything on our campuses. With the homeless population that we have around our Visalia campus, almost daily we're dealing with somebody on our campus that is typically harmless in their efforts to either use restrooms or to get into the showers, or occasionally we will have folks that will steal as part of their activity on the campus. But there's always the concern of something with mental illness and other issues that we deal with in the homeless population, that something more serious can occur. And a police incident could also involve, our contacting somebody or another agency involved in a vehicle pursuit, and a pursuit terminates at or near the campus. On the Hanford campus, we had the incident just across the street a couple of years ago involving a major SWAT operation that occurred right across the street from our campus. And so those are the type of situations that could become very serious for our students and our faculty and staff on campus. You also have a concern of chemical, hazmat, biological spills, that when we have issues that occur, we're in an agricultural area, there's a just unknown number of chemicals that move up and down our roadways, tankers and other type vehicles. And so if we have a spill or any kind of a threat of a spill either on campus with the variety of chemicals that we may have and or off campus, then we have to be concerned about what is the exposure to that. When that chemical cloud vaporizes and is it moving towards our campus, away from our campus, and trying to be prepared for that type of situation. Electrical outages have happened on each of our campuses and results in some emergency action. Severe weather, fortunately in the Central Valley, we don't have a lot of activity that causes us to shut down our campus because of weather, but there is a potential with severe storms, tornadoes, possibly snow and even flooding. And then, of course, the most significant issue that's at the forefront of our discussion today in our campuses and in most school districts is the active shooter. Shootings that are occurring or assaults that are occurring on our campus intended to bring mass casualties and destruction to our area. For most of these emergencies, simple planning and preparation will suffice to prepare for the emergency. Our Emergency Preparedness Handbook is located on the COS District Police website. Student Services, District Police, Emergency Preparedness tab. Click on that and you have a PDF of an annually updated preparedness guide that gives you information about everything from medical emergencies, earthquakes, evacuation, shelter in place as we move down the line to the bomb threat, workplace violence, power outages. Just simple step-by-step things that we need to do. Now, in reality, generally, we know what to do in most of these cases. We know that in the case of an evacuation order that we need to get out of the building and we need to do so quickly, but at the same time try to do so without falling down and running over the top of people and evacuating in a way that's safe and calm and getting out of the building. In a fire situation, the fire alarms go off, other things. We typically know how to respond to most emergency situations that occur. Earthquakes, as the earthquake begins, one of the first things that we're going to do is figure out very quickly, where am I? What can I get under? What is going to provide me some safety? The handbook talks about those things, and then of course being able to get out of the building and concerns of what's outside when you get there. Power lines, other things that could cause or hurt you when you're outside. So emergency preparedness in general is something that we can all look at and give some thought to in advance of an emergency. Something else that we're putting together, working with facilities and our safety council and with Jonathan Hatley, our new safety compliance specialist, we're putting together emergency safety information boards that are going to go into classrooms in our district. These are to provide some additional ready information that is available to faculty, to staff, and students in situations that are located in the rooms. This one, we intend to start with an active shooter poster that David Cargill designed. This poster will go on one side. The posters can be changed out at any point to put some new advertisement or information on that we'd like to use. And then on this side is a flip chart. The flip chart is something that we've seen used at other school districts that were brought to us. It provides much of the same information that's in the Emergency Preparedness Manual. It's colored and the pages are colored, and you can just flip up under bomb threat, look, and then here's some basic information about what to do with bomb threat, contact information, and so forth. And then one of the key pieces of information that's recommended for safety planning within a school district and such is to identify the location. So if we're in this room, for instance, and one of these was in this room, it would say Education E63. So it provides, so if you're in the midst of an emergency, you need help, you're dialing the phone to call for help, and somebody says, well, where are you? Oh, I'm not sure. I'm in a room. I think it's called the education building. Well, if they're looking at this, it's going to provide some information on that. So Byron and Jonathan and I have been working on this whole project, and then we'll be, contacting, each of the sites to just determine room nomenclature and stuff in the effort to get that into place and to have those just as added information out as we try to increase prevention and awareness in our classrooms. General emergency preparedness steps. Emergencies can happen at any time without warning. It's best to read all of our basic safety procedures and emergency preparedness before the emergency occurs. When the emergency occurs is not the time to try to figure out what I'm supposed to do. I really encourage you to take a few minutes to look at the Emergency Preparedness Handbook and understand what are some of the basic steps that need to occur in order to effectively survive these type of incidents. Know the building plans. Know where you work, what building your office is in. Where would you exit at any given time? If an evacuation order was given or an earthquake was given, or we had a situation where you had to quickly leave your area, do you know how you would do that? Are you familiar with the exits that leave your building? Two-story buildings versus one-story buildings, are significant. We may know where the elevator is, but we may not know exactly where the stairwells are because I've never had to find those or use those stairwells. So consider, taking a walk around and taking note of where these things are within the building. Fire extinguishers, fire alarms, secure rooms, for instance. As we move toward active shooter a little bit more, we'll talk more about hiding and barricading, but where would safe rooms be, in comparison within your room? If you had an opportunity to get somewhere, where do you think would be the best place for you to be based on visibility and door locking and just those factors that we'll talk about? Give some thought to that. Have keys readily available to lock and unlock doors. Hanford, we probably have what I consider to be one of the better keying systems with our fobs and our locking systems here within the campus. Tulare typically utilizes the Videx key, the electronic key, and then Visalia has a number of different locking devices, mechanisms, including the ASA key, and in some cases the old Schlegg key, and then some buildings have been equipped with the Videx key. So when you're in a classroom, when you're in a room that you're working in, your office, a classroom administrative area, do you know how to lock your door? Do you know how to lock the door in preparation for some type of an incident that may occur? And if you know how to lock the door, does it require a key? And if it's going to require a key, do you have the key with you? Do you keep it on your person? So when something should occur that you need to lock, can I quickly lock that door? Or do I need to fumble to find my keys and to do things before I can get to the door to lock it? We utilize things like safety magnets on some doors that help because some of the mechanisms for instance, on the Visalia campus do not have internal lock and unlock devices, either with a key or by a thumb. You have to unlock the door on the mechanism outside, lock or unlock. So we offer the safety magnets on those doors, and in some that the safety magnets don't work, we offer a lock block to go into the door that allows the door to remain locked but freely open and close, and simply removing the magnet or moving the lock block over allows the door then to close and secure without exposing yourself to the outside. So not every lock is perfect, not every lock is the same. So when you're in a room, either as a teacher or as a staff person, make sure you know how to secure that door quickly and what steps need to be in place, and are you prepared to lock that door if needed. You might consider emergency kits in your office. If you have a place where you work think about some things you might keep with you that are handy. We would suggest things like food items. If you are somebody who has food issues due to some type of health issue, do you have food that you keep on hand in case, in an incident, if you were to have to stay in your building for some period of time? Would you have something you could snack on if needed, if you needed it for health issues or for medications? Flashlight in power outage situations, or in some buildings that don't have a lot of natural light and get pretty dark. A flashlight, I always recommend that on your smartphone you probably have one of the brighter flashlights that you have that you can use rather than trying to carry around or have some type of portable device. But do you have some things that might be able to assist you in an emergency? I always suggest taking a first aid class as an individual. It's good information to have. We work on a college setting with thousands of students and faculty and staff around us. At any given time, somebody could begin to have an issue, and the more training and experience we have, the better equipped we are to help with that emergency and or to be able to advise, and in case of an extreme emergency, when I may not have medical coming right away, I could be better equipped with some training to at least understand how to stop bleeding, what shock looks like, what other things are that may be able to help in an emergency. And then I think probably one of the most important things as we work through emergency preparedness and planning is to think through incidents or scenarios, mental preparation. I can remember in my early career as a young deputy sheriff, one of my sergeants telling me that when I'm out working patrol and I'm driving around and I don't have a lot going on, take some time to think through calls that you might get as a police officer. I would think about the robbery that might occur at the one store that was open after 10 o'clock on on a Saturday night at a local community that I worked in. If there was going to be a robbery, that would be the place that's going to happen. So he would encourage us to think through how we would respond to that. What are the things I should be thinking about? What resources should I be asking for? How would I approach it? Where would I make my contact? What would I be looking for? Who would I call? Thinking all the way through the handling of that call. And when I've done that a few times, I haven't experienced it, but mentally I've got a thought process in place already that's going to start prompting me to think about these things. And I think it's important that we consider that same type of effort when we're doing emergency planning, particularly in the age of the active shooter. As you sit in your office, as you're in your classrooms, as you're working around the campus, wherever you're assigned, give some thought to what would I do at this moment if I heard gunfire? What would I do at this moment if the power suddenly went off? Or if I felt an earthquake? Begin to think about what I would do at that particular moment. Where are the exits? Where would I go? Who would I call? Do I have my cell phone handy? Do I have other materials that I need? Where would I hide? What room would I go to, potentially? What is the most secure room, in my opinion, that is in my area that I would try to barricade myself into if I had the opportunity to do so? And we'll look at some of those things as we look specifically at active shooter. But begin to think, what would I do at this moment if this happened? Because what we're trying to fight against with this type of thought process is the natural instinct for most humans is when faced with a challenge, we freeze, and then we flee, and then we consider fighting if we get cornered or we have to fight. That's the general steps that most of us will probably go through. These steps, mental preparation and thinking through these things, helps us to shorten the freeze time. Because the freeze time, if it takes me a minute to come out of my shock and start thinking about what would I do, that may have been the minute that I had that could have saved my life. That may have been that instant that could have, changed the outcome of this particular incident. So by thinking through that, we're just trying to shorten that time of your coming through the initial reaction and then into how would I handle this situation going forward. So mental preparation, just food for thought, something to do as an attitude of mental preparedness. Now, typical response to emergencies are going to fall into one of these three areas. One, you're going to evacuate. Any of the emergencies that we've talked about, one is you're going to evacuate. You're going to exit from a building or a location using the quickest and safest route possible. This is going to be examples in a fire situation, earthquakes, bomb threats, electrical outages. You're going to need to get out of the building, and so evacuation is typically what you will do or what you will be, told to do in whatever communication process. A second action would be to shelter in place. Shelter in place means that you're going to move into an enclosed room of some type, and you're going to await further instructions. Now, those can be things such as hazmat biological chemical spills. It could be a police incident on or near campus where we're telling folks just to get inside until we figure out what's going on. Severe weather, other situations that you're just safer to be indoors than you would be outside in some area of the campus. And then the third is going to be an active shooter, which is going to stand by itself. When we have information of that, we're not going to tell you, or the recommendation is not to tell you to shelter in place or to lock down. The recommendation is that you understand the need to run, hide, and fight. Because I'm not going to direct somebody in an active shooter situation to lock down, because that's really the last place you want to be, is locked down inside of a building where the shooter is at when you had the opportunity to leave, but somebody told you to stay inside. So in that situation, when active shooter comes out, that's going to be, the directive that comes out when you see or hear active shooter. These three words are what I want to have come to mind: run, hide, and fight. And that's what we'll be looking at during the next portions. A little bit on emergency notification. Our systems have been improving greatly over the last couple of years in our effort to be better and to have better systems in place to be able to communicate with our faculty, staff, and students in emergency situations. We have two systems in place now that we use. One is the Alertus emergency notification system, and the second is Regroup, which are the emails and texts. Most of you probably received the alert this morning on another robbery that occurred around the Visalia campus. That's coming out through Regroup, which is also the same system that financial aid might use to send out to specific groups, but it's my primary tool to use for crime alerts. Crime alerts such as the robbery, other things, what our Clery process would call timely notifications, where a crime has occurred and we need to let our campus community know that something has happened. And in order to be safe, I need to let you know that it happened. Alertus is our emergency notification system. I won't use Alertus except in, we're going to begin a process of doing some testing and drilling in the next semester. But when we look at Alertus, this is when you see an Alertus, this means something really bad has happened or is about to happen. I'm not going to get anybody desensitized to Alertus notifications that are about something that's not an actual emergency at that moment. When we see Alertus fire off, it'll be in place. A couple of areas that Alertus plays into is that we have the desktop computers. Every desktop computer and I believe laptop computer that's a district machine that is tied to our district network has the Alertus software app on it, and it will fire up with the emergency record. If it's turned on, it will overcome whatever is on the screen and provide an emergency alert as to what is going on our campuses. We're now installing in specific locations in-building notifications, what are called beacons. And the beacons also fire off with LED lights and a horn. And it has the emergency message that's tied to that, as well as some of them are connected to the LED boards for a little broader message that will be going across. We also have monitors. The monitors, several on this campus and others, as we install monitors that are attached to our network wirelessly. We'll also have Alertus built into them so that they will become Alertus notification monitors as well as other business that's advertised on them. We have outdoor notification here outside with a small bullhorn speaker that's directed towards the pavilion, the new pavilion area. And on Visalia, we have a large mass array that's on the Thule building that is designed to hit anywhere on the Visalia campus. That's going to be heard as a horn and then as a voice or a text-to-voice translation of whatever the message is that's out. And then the ideal one that I'm really excited about with our updated Alertus enhanced software is the Giant Alert or the Alertus mobile app that you can download that I've been advertising. Now, we haven't got a lot of people signed up with that. I looked at it today and I only have 195 people that have taken time to download the app and set up their code name on it or put in our code so that you can begin to receive alerts. But the idea behind this is that along with everything else that's happening, if you have your cell phone or tablet with you and you have the app set up and you set it to receive push notices from the app, you will receive the push notice the same as that's coming out on computer screens and everything else is coming out on your phone or tablet at that point. So between all of these, we have the potential of getting as many people as we can notified with emergency notification should they occur. So again, Regroup to ensure the timely warnings. I just need you to make sure that in Banner Web you're going in and making sure that your information is current, that your email is current, that your phone number, your cell phone is current in Banner Web, because Regroup grabs information from Banner Web to send out the alerts as they put together their stuff. It's used for crime alerts and is not primary in an emergency, but it ties to Alertus, so it's very possible that texts and emails will come out at the same time that an Alertus is firing off on your computer screen. So just a wide swath of information going out. Alertus, again, are all of these different areas, and Giant Alert is our mobile application. So I would encourage you to go download that app as well, get that into place. On our district police website, you'll find emergency notifications, and you see the process where to download the app. I think it's Alertus Plus for one type of phone, Alertus app for another, and then the code word to put in to be able to be on Giant, to receive Giant alerts. All right, moving into active shooter. This is not the most current screen. This is from the FBI. This is from 2000 through 2016. No reason, there's no argument about the number of active shooters that we've had over the past 20 years. Sometimes there's an argument about what is an active shooter incident and what isn't. And so some websites might say there's been 500 active shooter incidents during this time. But the FBI has a fairly, concise definition of active shooter. They listed at 220 incidents, which is, 220 more than we should have had during this time frame. So this does not include the most recent Parkland or Vegas or some of the other things that have happened. But even in this 16-year period with the stats that the FBI uses, 1,486 injuries or casualties that have occurred in these incidents, 661 fatalities, 825 who were wounded. Now, one of the interesting statistics about this is just how they broke it down at that time. 43% were in what were described as commerce, business or commercial areas. The second statistic is education. 21.8% of those incidents occurred on an educational area. The majority were K-12 with 15%, 33 incidents. Higher education, 6.8%, 15 incidents that occurred during that time. Open spaces, 13%, government, 10.5%, including military and other government properties. Residences, houses of worship, and healthcare center filled in some of the smaller areas. So there really hasn't been too many places that have been untouched by this active shooter, phenomena. But certainly education has had its fair share of these type of incidents that have occurred. So active shooter incidents, some active shooter trainings will take you into case studies, and they would look at different case studies. I don't see a value of that in this setting as we're conveying information, because we've all read the newspapers. We see, what occurred. Most of you, if I were to ask you about Columbine, even though that's been more than 20 years ago, you'd probably be able to give me some details about what happened at Columbine and some of these other areas. So we're going to look at them more generally and not on a case-by-case basis. So certainly active shooter is not an issue that seems to be going away. There's no indication that it's going to go away, and in fact, it seems to even be increasing a bit in the frequency of its occurrence. It usually, when studying these cases, it usually is an individual. Very few cases have involved more than one suspect being part of it. Generally male. In these 220, there were only 2 incidents that a female was involved. The vast majority are male, single males acting alone, and the large majority of them were white males as part of the incidents. They're generally defined as actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people. This is their target. It's mass casualty. It's coming in prepared with ammunition, firearms ammunition, improvised explosive devices. Their effort is to hurt and kill people. And they tend not to have any plan to escape. The majority of them were killed either by suicide or by law enforcement intervention. Very few appeared to have any plan that they planned to come out of the incident alive. Our most recent one with Parkland, he did leave, but again, I don't know that that was his plan, because he left a rifle that was registered to him there and other stuff, but at some point, whether it's cold feet or what, he decided to leave the scene. But the majority of them, that's not what happens. They tend to target confined and populated areas. In most cases, firearms are used. Usually no pattern on how victims are selected. There's not a set group that they're specifically looking for. They're just coming in. They may have an understanding of the environment if they've worked there, if they've attended school there, and they tend to know where large groups gather, but no real pattern on how they're looking for their victims. Many have a history of mental health issues, and frequently someone was aware of or at least suspicious of their potential activity. These things don't typically occur in a vacuum. One of the key areas of prevention that we look at today, and it didn't work very well in Parkland, unfortunately, is that we need people to tell us when something happens. when something is going on, when they see, they hear, and they become aware or concerned about somebody's behavior, their statements and so forth, and they need to be willing to tell somebody. But on the other side of that, as we saw the failures in Parkland specifically, the authorities need to respond appropriately and be able to deal, with that situation, to look carefully at that. Now, there is no magic ball that helps us to know this. For individuals out there in the world that are planning this, thinking about this, talking about this, and somebody becomes aware of it, they don't know for sure if the guy's going to really follow through with this or if that's his intention. But they think, wow, he's bragging about having bought 2,000 rounds of ammunition, and he's got his third gun, and he's got this, and he hates school, and he talks all the time about how much he hates his school, and somebody needs to go in and do something. And we become aware of that. That information then comes to law enforcement. Law enforcement has to deal with that in some fashion through their media, social media, and those other things. But again, within the confines of the law that allows us to enter homes to work through things. But typically when we become aware of things, we're able to take some steps towards identifying and seeing what the level of threat is. We see all the time, especially after an incident occurs, even in Tulare, Kings County, we see a number of incidents where juveniles mainly are arrested and taken into custody because of threats that are made after the fact and are heard and overheard by people who have seen it. So school shooters are not living in a vacuum. Somebody else typically knows. Family, friends, students, social media, and so forth gives us some indications. If we see or hear something, we need to say something. And at COS, we have the Behavioral Intervention Team referral process that helps to bring some of those folks to light. At a previous presentation, I had somebody ask the question, well, they gave a little scenario about working with the student over the counter. The student made a couple of comments that were concerning to them, but wasn't an outright threat, but made a couple of comments that were concerning. This has been in the past couple of years, and then that person left, and they said, I didn't say anything to anybody about it. And so we talked about whether she should have, and I think we came to the answer that yes, we probably should have. But then there's also the concern of that person knows that I'm the one who they told that to, and then if law enforcement goes and pounds on their door that afternoon and said, what are you talking about? Why did you make that statement? Suddenly, I won't feel safe, at my location, because if that person comes back, he's going to know I'm the one that said something. So we do have to be very careful when receiving information that we don't, just go right out and, reveal who the source of information was or where it came from. But we have to find, the middle ground that helps us to be able to become aware of the person and be able to at least do the background and look at the person and see what we can find out. During my time as chief, 2 years now, I think I've had 3 incidents where we have worked with the FBI, where we've worked with the Visalia PD on another case, and the Chicago Police Department on 3 students that we have had, all social media hits. And in each case, they ultimately came down to nothing. They posted something, shared something, did something, and then when it came down, they acknowledged it was stupid, that they did it, and a search of their homes, a search of their bedrooms, interviews with family and everybody else reveals they have nothing. They have no weapons, no ammunition, no access to such stuff, but we worked it through all the way through to ensure that we did not have a threat on our campus, and that's exactly what we want to try to be able to do as part of an ongoing process in protecting our campus. So really key is if we see something or we hear something, it's so important that we do something, and in this case it is to report it and let us know what is going on. General active shooter response. In preparation for this, just with anything else, it's recommended take note of the 2 nearest exits to where you're at any given time. If we're sitting in here, pretty clear the 2 exits we have here out of this room. We have closed windows that likely we would have some difficulty getting out here. But where we're at, what would we where would I go if an incident occurred now? Likely if something was happening in this hallway, I'm going to secure these doors and do my best to lock down and get the word out through 911 that we have an incident on this campus, this is the location, and this is what I know. Be aware of your environment and any possible dangers. Pay attention, be aware. So often, you almost walk into the hole, that's in the sidewalk because we're not paying attention. We're so focused on something else, whether it's our phone or some other, something we're doing. I've been victim of almost walking, off of something because I was looking at something or dealing with something. So being aware of our environment, paying attention to what's around us. So often we get calls from staff and from other people for people who just look out of place, who don't belong. They don't look like students, they're typically maybe transient in nature or some other aspect, but we go and we check them out to make sure that they have legitimate business and they're not here for any other reason to bring danger to the campus. Be aware, for instance, if a fire alarm sounds, that's the new trick that's being used now to empty rooms. The guy in Parkland did it, knew that everybody was in their classrooms, is in the hallway, pulls the fire alarm, as I understand it, and off, people start to pile out of their room as they do in that K-12 environment, and once the hallway is filled, he opens fire. So just be aware. We may need to exit. We may have a legitimate fire situation, but let's make sure as we enter that we don't see anything unusual as we begin to move out, and just in the back of your mind, be prepared to move if something, else begins to happen. If you're in an office and you can't run, stay there. Secure the door. If in a hallway and you can't get out, then get into a room and secure the door. Take action against the shooter only as a last resort and call 911 as soon as it's possible and safe to do so. Lots of active shooter videos that are out there. I've watched literally dozens of them as individuals have made them. We have the Houston one that's probably one of the more popular ones that they did that's been showed a lot. But what I want to, in one of the ones that I found that really seemed to be more applicable to our higher education setting that I liked, and this is the one I'd like to share with you today. This was done by the University of Alberta, and I thought was very good. Let's take a few minutes to watch this. So very similar to other active shooter videos you have, but again, this one seemed to focus more on a college environment, higher education. So I've always thought that was a little bit better. So I just want to review the concepts that were talked about in the video as we begin coming close to the close of the presentation. First of all is to run. That is our primary goal. It's not to hide and it's not to fight, but it is to get out of the danger area. If there is an escape path, we need to go. Have predetermined routes in mind, part of the preparation, the thought process of how do we get out of here. Leave your belongings behind. It's not important to get the things that you need, get out of the building. Help others escape if possible, but don't let them talk you out of going or don't stay simply because they don't want to evacuate. If you believe you can go, you believe it's the right thing to do, you go. When you move, stay low and do not stop. Don't stop at any cost. Move. Distance is your friend in any kind of a situation like this. It prevents, also when you get outside, prevent individuals from entering the active area. Begin to be the person that's turning people away, not allowing them to go into danger. Keep your hands visible at all times. If there's officers outside, they're not going to know if you're a victim or you're a suspect at that point, so keep your hands visible. Follow the instruction of those police officers. Don't attempt to move wounded people at that point. Just get out and call 911 when you're safe if you have something to report. If you have some additional information, location of a shooter, other information to report. Otherwise, recognize that the 911 operators are going to be overwhelmed with the calls that they're going to be receiving. So if there's already police on scene and you know things are happening, there's no reason for you to try to get another call in to put information in that's already there. If running is not an option, then choose the hiding place that is out of the shooter's view, provides protection if shots are fired towards you, but the simple truth is that in most situations, depending on the firearm that's being used, these walls are not going to stop, bullets. The doors likely are not going to stop bullets depending on, the caliber that's being used, a rifle versus a handgun and the type of ammunition. but what you're trying to do is create an environment where they don't know you're there. So out of the shooter's view, provides protection if shots are fired towards you, and does not trap you or restrict your movements, during, the incident. But we're a college, we're classrooms. There's virtually every campus that I walk through, rooms are just like this. Typically, we don't have exits out this way. We exit out this way. If we have two doors, they're typically like this out into the same hallway. So in this, when you find yourself here, the very best thing you can do is secure, lock the door, barricade if possible, get some tables turned over, and turn the lights out, phones off, no distraction, and then be prepared if that person, does try to work their way into your room. Blockade with furniture if possible. Silence phone, turn off any sources of noise, try to hide behind any large items that you can, cabinets or desks, and remain quiet. The one thing that we see in active shooter situations time and time again is they don't take time to try to breach doors. That's not, their goal. Their goal is high casualty, moving as quickly as they can. They come to this room, the doors are locked, they don't have a key to the door, they shake the door, they don't hear anything going on inside, they're moving quickly to try to find another room that they can access, that there are people inside. Not a lot of time spent involved trying to breach an individual door to get in. So use that fact to your advantage. If evacuation or hiding is not possible, then try to remain calm. Find the area of concealment. Staying calm will help others calm down as well. This is probably to me, one of the most scariest moments in an active shooter situation is when you can't run, you don't have a room to hide in for whatever the physical environment is, and now you have to try to find some place to hide. Do your best to find that place, to get behind. If it's in a library area and you can get behind bookshelves and you can get behind, something to conceal and hide yourself, that's what you have to do. And then be prepared to fight if the shooter approaches, or if you have something, if their distraction is over here, that may be your opportunity to slip out quickly. But be prepared to fight if necessary. Dial 911 if possible to alert the police to the shooter's location. That's a reason to call 911. If you know where they're at in the building, put the call in. If you cannot talk, leave the line open and allow the dispatcher to listen. If there's active stuff going on, allow them to pick up what information they can from that. So, that is probably one of the most difficult moments. Action against the active shooter, fight. As a last resort, and only when your life is in imminent danger, attempt to disrupt his or her plan and/or incapacitate the active shooter by acting as aggressively as possible against him or her. You want to hurt them. That's it. And it's not our nature. It's not what unless we've trained to do that in some way, it's not our nature. But in this moment, this is when we find a way, whether it's a pair of scissors, whether it's the fire extinguisher, whether it's the baseball bat from PE, whatever it is, we have to find a way to overwhelm, if possible, and use whatever we have in improvised weapons to hurt them. Committing to our actions and buying ourselves time, or buying others time, or buying first responders time. It's at that moment, as we saw in the video, it's making the decision, do I act, or am I going to sit here and just be a victim, or am I going to take that step and do my best to overcome? We're going to try to disrupt the shooter's plan to overwhelm the shooter with numbers of people. This is the point where it's okay to be mad and fight back, and you can win. There have been active shooter situations where they have overcome the shooter, where somebody was able to come up behind them and grab them when they didn't know that they were behind them and take them to the ground, and then people pile on, just like we saw in the video, pile on and are able to get the firearm away from them, and the incident is contained until law enforcement gets there. It is possible. We just have to be prepared. General police response. The one thing, I'll have people that will ask, well, barricaded in a room, I don't know, how long can I, will it hold for 30 minutes if somebody's trying to get in? They don't have to hold for 30 minutes. They have to hold for a few minutes. In the locations of our campuses and most district facilities, we're not in some rural country area where you have one sheriff's deputy that's going to take 30 minutes to get here. If there's an incident called in on 911 on any of our campuses, Tulare, Hanford, or Visalia, there's going to be a dozen police cars here in the matter of a few minutes. I mean, they will come in, Hanford Police Department, Kings County, Tulare PD, the Sheriff's Department. If we have an officer on campus from the district police, they are equipped and prepared to be the initial responder to the incident. But it only has to hold for a few minutes because law enforcement will be on site quickly and will move towards the target. The one thing that we've learned in active shooter situations since Columbine is that it's no longer acceptable to sit outside and wait for the cavalry to get there, for the SWAT team to arrive. We saw all of the conflict in Parkland with, the reports of the sheriff's deputies waiting outside at their units and not engaging, and it wasn't until another police agency arrived and said, "What are we doing out here? Let's go." And then they entered the building to seek the shooter. In this case, that is exactly what will happen with the training for Kings and Tulare County law enforcement, is they will enter the building and they will be looking for the threat, and they will move to take that threat out. So within minutes, you should have law enforcement inside this building seeking out the armed suspect. They will enter immediately. They will not aid victims. Their role, that initial search team coming in, is to eliminate the threat and to prevent further casualties. People that are injured, people that are there, they're going to walk right by as they are trying to identify where they are. Within a couple of minutes after that, your first team should enter, which will be law enforcement officers escorting paramedics, fire, EMTs, who will begin to triage and treat the wounded. But the first teams in will not be treating wounded, and that's difficult sometimes excuse me, for people to understand, but their priority is to stop the threat. So during this time, show your hands at all time. Again, follow directions immediately. Officers outside will direct you to the point wherever it's determined that evacuees are going to go. They're going to gather. They're going to ask you to remain there until they have an opportunity to debrief you quickly, to identify you, and to make sure that do you have any information to offer, and are you any way connected to the incident? And then from there, it'll start to thin out. Things will be chaotic, no question. An incident of this nature, it will be a mess for a couple of hours, but the key is that the threat's eliminated and we're now in a safe environment as we're trying to determine, are there any other players in this? There's always the concern of whether there's IEDs or some type of explosive devices that have been placed that may not have gone off yet. There's lots of questions that will be asked and working through that. But once you're outside and with law enforcement, typically you will be in a safe environment, and it's a matter of getting it thinned out and done.